Hello, my name's Andy, I'm the Ginger Gamer. Welcome to episode 14. Now, this is going to be a continuation of my Prehistoric Canada Park that I'm making in the excellent Prehistoric Kingdom game. If you watched episode 13, you would have seen the woolly rhino enclosure, which is here, which I quite liked. I was quite pleased with. I had a nice sort of narrow stream, which is not difficult to do in the game, but you have to be a little bit creative to make it work. And also a nice low walkway for guests to follow to have a good view of the rhinos. And I felt good about giving them a nice large and well thought out environment, because very often they are kind of stuck in with the mammoths a little bit. So I thought it was quite good. Now, since making that, I've made 4 more exhibits, and they are the final 4 exhibits for the park, which I think brings us to about 17 exhibits in the park. I've also just added a little bit of extra bits just outside the rhino enclosure. So we've got a little cafe and some seats, obviously the steps down from the enclosure, and some toilets. Now, the next environment is something a little bit different, and I had the idea and I wasn't entirely sure, and I'm still not, if it's really in keeping with the theme of the rest of the park. And if you don't know, the theme of the park is really that it's a dinosaur wildlife park that's set into a large hill range in the Canadian forest, and I've kind of stuck to some general sort of principles and themes, and that is there's a lot of wood. Sometimes wood used in places where dinos could definitely break it, but I just wanted to keep that kind of very sort of foresty theme, really. And I'm only using certain plants as well, so I'm sticking really quite rigidly to a theme. And I've got to be honest, I've probably exhausted the theme a little bit, but anyway, this one kind of goes against the rest of the park. Right, so as you walk down these steps to exit from the woolly mammoth side of the hill, you come all the way down, and as you can see, there's a statue for a T-Rex. Now, you will know, if you followed previous episodes, I've already got quite a large T-Rex enclosure. So the kind of conceit for this enclosure is that it's for a T-Rex that doesn't really play nice with others and is a little bit temperamental. And as you can see, the fencing is solid fencing, not the glass fencing that I've used everywhere else. And it's got an entrance and an exit building, and it's also got a door there, and then what is essentially a track that vehicles use, which I haven't really put in a lot of the sort of staffing requirements around the park, and that's really because I wanted to keep them hidden, because I wanted the park just to look really as natural as a park could be, really. So anyway, back to this enclosure. Not only has it got these fences, it's also got a queuing system, and the main entrance has a lot of signage for guests as well. So only enter when lights are green, which is kind of intimating that they only let so many people into the enclosure at one time so as not to annoy the dinosaur. And also no running, which I guess is you don't want to trigger the dinosaur into some kind of hunting behaviour unless instructed to do so, again intimating there may be some risks. And then other things like do not bang on the glass and no flash photography, which is all very different to the usual kind of signage around the park, and is creating that picture that this is a temperamental dinosaur. Now, for guests to enter the enclosure, you go down the steps, and a bit like the Smilodon enclosure, you're going underground a bit to then emerge back out of the ground and into a fenced walkway, which enables you to move around actually inside the dinosaur's enclosure. Except this is a little different because it has a lot of metallic framework and a grid top, and again some more beams, and again it's about making it a lot more secure for guests. And I'm pretty happy with it. The guests get to walk all the way through the T-Rex enclosure, and again going under the ground to get out again. And the T-Rex has quite a nice large environment for its grumpy self. And there you see it being entirely ungrumpy and having a bit of a nap. But I quite like it, and there's nice views for guests of the T-Rex eating and then drinking over here. And yeah, I quite like it, although I was sort of worried it's a bit out of keeping, but then I thought if the park had a T-Rex so that it needed to do some extra work with, really, this might be what it decided on. And I do reuse these again and again, have a way for guests to go underground and up into the middle of an enclosure, but in a slightly different way towards the end of the park. Anyway, that's the T-Rex, the Rogue T-Rex enclosure. So I'm going to do a bit of tidying up here and adding some bits around there, but I haven't quite got to it. So coming down from there, before we go completely down off the side of the hill, and at this stage in the park we are working our way back down from the hill back towards the entrance, really. We've got the walkway that only goes slightly the way down and then follows along the side of the cliff edge, really. And in this enclosure we have a lot of ground planting and some more river, and this is the same river that flows through two other enclosures, so it is a continuation of that. And in this we have really the largest dinosaurs in the park, the Argentinosaurus, and I do apologise again if I'm not pronouncing things properly. I do my best, but yeah, it's quite a large enclosure for them, but I guess any enclosure might not be quite big enough for such large animals. So yeah, along the side I've used the sort of muddy swampy area again, and this is to kind of intimate this is where they come to have a drink, and they've kind of worn the earth away. Right on cue, sticking its head in the mud, thank you. And it's got two feeders along here for them to feed close to where the guests walk, and the guests walk all the way along this walkway and then come to some more steps which they can work their way down to here, and then they can either go along this fencing here and look at the dinosaurs that way, or they can go up some more steps and up to this really large raised cafe area with seating and toilets and a lovely view of the dinosaurs. And again, I'm quite happy with this enclosure. I think it works quite well, and yeah, the dinosaurs, you know, we're not sure about the dinosaurs' behaviour yet and how it relates to happiness in their enclosures, but they seem to be quite happy in there. Right, so to the next enclosure, you work your way around this path and you come down to here. Now I've again reused, but actually slightly improved upon this kind of moat system that I used for the mammoths to enable guests to pretty much have an unfettered view of the dinosaurs while still remaining safe. And I think it works quite well. So this enclosure is for the Parasaurolophus. Lophus? My pronouncing is awful, I do apologise. But yeah, it was an enclosure probably that I'm the least happy with. And as you can see, there's a lot of muddy, swampy areas here, and then there's a bit more of a kind of grassy, planted area at the back here with bedding for them, and a bit of a lake as well. And I think I've probably overdone this space. I think it's probably too big. I should have made this a bit smaller, although they don't seem bothered. And if you look at, fact files on these dinosaurs, they did spend time in foresty areas, in swampy areas, and onto plains as well. So they did like a range of habitats, really. Now I also made another cafe because I can't resist it, which goes out on supports over this area again to kind of poke into the enclosure a little bit and give guests a nice close-up view of the dinosaurs. And as I said, it's not my favourite habitat. I'm not I'm not that delighted with it really. But I think, as I said at the beginning, I think as a theme for this park, I'm kind of reaching the end of not just ideas but ways of making the habitats different whilst keeping to the theme, I think, at the moment. Now, as we work our way down here, we wind down there, down some more steps, and we come to, I think it's quite an interesting enclosure and habitat. Having said all that about running out of ideas, I think this is probably my last good idea. We've come down here again. You can see some toilets and a cafe and a seating area, and I will tidy this up a bit more because it's not perfect. And again, some more queuing system there, and then we come to the Velociraptor breeding centre. Now, obviously the Velociraptors aren't out as yet at the time I'm making this video, and I've made this area of the map, but they will be soon with update 8, and so I've ready made an environment for them. Now, what it actually is, as you can see, you can work down some steps through quite a long tunnel, and then you'll be out, not into the enclosure, but actually in the middle of what is an oval enclosure with a space in the centre for guests, that guests can come back up these steps and spend time in and view the enclosures. Now, this oval shape is actually split into 4 enclosures, and the conceit of it is that each of those enclosures will have a breeding pair of velociraptors. Now, each enclosure has a similar layout. It all has a bedding area, some water, and then a nest that I've kind of invented. I'm not going to be 100% sure about how all of this works until I have the velociraptors in the enclosures and see how they function. I think that nest might be a little bit big, but it's kind of giving them somewhere technically to lay their eggs. And so, yeah, there's 4 of them that work their way round, all similar but not identical. And guests, as I said, can go through this long tunnel up these steps, and then you're in the middle of the 4 enclosures, and there's a sort of decorative lake and a bridge, and you can work your way around in any way you want. You can cross the bridge and go over to this side, or just do a big circular route, and you can have access to all 4 enclosures from within, really, which I thought was quite a nice idea. I was quite happy with that, and it's come out okay. It was a little tricky to get it working, but I think it's working quite nicely, and it will remain to be seen how well it really works, and I don't think I'll really know until the velociraptors are actually released and I can put them in the exhibit. Right, that is the Velociraptor breeding centre, which I think is quite nice. Obviously I've somewhat copy and pasted this entrance building from the Rogue T-Rex enclosure, and you exit the exhibit down this one. Ooh, that I haven't done a lot of work with yet. It's quite plain. I will make them all look a little bit better. Now, as I said, this is the final exhibit, and if you follow this path and down the steps, you are back at the arrival centre after a very long and hilly trek, and probably quite risky trek around the park. And you will follow this path, and that enables you to get back here to the arrivals module, really, and you can exit the park. So the park is quite big. I can't go completely above it and show you it all, but that is basically the size of the park, built into this Canadian hillside. Now, as I say, that's all the end to the enclosures, and I did say when it was all finished I'm going to make a park tour, which will be a lot more, maybe cinematic is a little bit of an exaggeration, but I will spend more time doing some good and interesting videoing of the park, and a bit more of a coherent talk through of what it is and what guests could expect. Now, before I do that, I've obviously got to wait for update 8 to come out so I can put the Velociraptors in. But I also want to go around the park and do some tidying up and fill those last little areas that are still a bit empty, like the back here around this side here. I could just add trees, but I'm thinking of doing some more interesting things. I've so far only got a few shops which are at the very beginning of the park, so I may add some shops as well around the rear of the park, but again we'll see. And I might just tidy things up a little bit and add a few more details just to make it that little bit more real and coherent and bring it all together. I haven't got signs on all the enclosures as of yet, so that'll be something I need to add. And I might add some seating. I did think about putting some raised seating here so guests could kind of sit up on a kind of almost a terrace, and yeah, and maybe add some covers to the seating so guests didn't necessarily have to get wet, because I don't think Canada's renowned for being dry all the time. So maybe some covers. So I'll do that kind of work, get it done till I'm happy with it, and then also, as I said, I've got to wait for the Velociraptors to be released with update 8, which I'm really excited for. Now what you might be able to see is I've added a lot of trees around the rear of the hill, the bits of the hill I'm not going to finish, and then I will add some trees down there on the plains. Now I haven't added to, if we come all the way back over here, sorry for sort of flitting around. Now if you see this part of the one of the river, which is the Western River, you see I've added quite a lot of detail, and obviously there's the bridge, but for the rest of the rivers I've just really put trees down to the water's edge, and that's because you're not really going to see that as you traverse the park. It's just going to be there in the background really, and I didn't think there was that much point in added detail. And I am starting to hit frame rates drops because of the amount of detail, so yeah, I'm cutting the detail back in some parts. So yeah, so all I've got to do for the rest of this park, all he says, is wait for update 8 to come out and add some little finishing touches and add the Velociraptors, put some steps in there and connect that path up so the route is completely circular and guests can find it all the way around, which I'm not sure the current guest path finding will actually work for, but we'll see. Yeah, and there you go. And then I can make the final part tour video, which I'll try and do with a bit more quality than these park previews are made, and try and show the park off in its best light. And yeah, this park will then be done and I can move on to my next park, which I'm quite looking forward to doing. As I said in my last video, I've got 2 ideas. One is a bit silly and conceptual and completely unrealistic, and one is a much more traditional, almost zoo rather than park. So this is very much sort of based on being a wildlife park, and the next one I think will be more like a zoo, and that's kind of my plan. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I haven't made you too dizzy with my poor control around the park, and I hope I explained what I was doing well. It's quite late here in the UK as I film this, and I've just kind of finished making the Velociraptor one, and I realised I've been trying to keep the preview videos to sort of 2 or 3 exhibits, and I realised I've made 4 exhibits and not made a video, so I really wanted to get one out. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please like, please share, please subscribe, and there's lots to come on the channel, and there's possibly some content that's not even Prehistoric Kingdom related coming out soon. There will in the future be lots of content that's not Prehistoric Kingdom related, but I might take a little break before the next park and show off some other work I did, and I say did because it was 20 years ago that I did this, so I'll hopefully release that soon as well. Anyway, as I said, thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.